I have to mention, being a teacher, sometimes it could be so frustrating that undoubtedly the biggest technological change since I started teaching in 2019 is AI. Students who progress are always the ones with that growth mindset, who accept that mistakes are part of the process. Teachers are just another tool. Some of my students actually will come to me and say, hey, can you explain this? Because I asked AI and AI couldn't tell me. But I think that it is slowly changing the teacher's position or the teacher's role in language learning. So clearly students are going to AI first before teachers.
Tutor and Tech. Project about teaching languages, learning, technology, and how they co-evolve together.
Hi everybody, this is Tutor and Tech. If you hear this or watch this, means that we finally decided to actually make it a podcast. Woohoo! That's supposed to be super exciting. Tutor and Tech is a project about teaching languages, learning, technology, and how they co-evolve together. My name is Dima Basenka. I'm host of the podcast. I'm also author of the project, and I'm also co-creator of Ver. It is a digital vocabulary application for intermediate learners and higher. It is spelled wooropp.com or just for.app. And here with me today is Jin, and we're going to talk about learning languages, teaching languages, what changed, any recommendations to teachers and learners how to use technology a better way for learning, and also maybe think a little bit about where it can go further. Hi, Jin.
Hello.
Hi, I'm very, very, very excited to talk to you, and I was very happy when you answered my email. I didn't expect it, but I must maybe start from telling a secret right away, because I found you through Instagram.
Okay.
And it was very nice content with cute illustrations and nice imagery. I think it's a lot of vocabulary in there and also phrases. But then I opened your YouTube, and this is honestly the best language content I've seen anywhere.
Thank you.
How you go through day-to-day things very slowly, articulating everything very clearly, also showing things into the camera. I think it's super, super helpful. It's amazing content.
I'm very glad to hear that. Thank you so much.
Thanks for agreeing to talk to me.
I'm very happy to be here. Very excited.
How do you call yourself? Do you consider yourself a content creator or influencer or tutor first?
I definitely think of myself as a teacher first. That is what I've always wanted to be since I was a kid. And I only recently became a content creator, and I do call myself a content creator. I only started that last year. And so teacher first, content creator second, for sure.
Nice. Tell a little bit more about yourself. How did you get into teaching? For how long do you do it? What do you think is your best part as a tutor?
Okay, so I have been a tutor or a teacher since 2019. And I got into it, actually, it was my husband's fault. When he was my boyfriend at the time, and we lived in different states, and I needed a job that would allow me to continue working while in the process of moving. So I needed something online and very flexible. And one of my friends was teaching on a platform, teaching English, and they said, oh, I think you'd be great at this. And I've always wanted to be a teacher. But I always thought that I was going to be like an English literature teacher, or maybe like, a creative writing teacher. I did not expect to teach the English language, but honestly, I'm so glad that it worked out the way that it did. So I've been teaching online one-on-one classes since 2019. And so now I'm based in South Florida in the US, near Miami. And so, yeah, I find being a tutor very, very fulfilling because I get to help people. because especially in something like language learning, learning a language and speaking a language is, quite frankly, terrifying. Like, it is scary. And so if I can make that a little bit more comfortable for someone, then like I could say I've had a good day.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things which were happily made because of long distance relationship.
Yeah.
That's a good one. And also great that you let your creativity go creating this amazing content. Do you have any focus? Do you specialize in your teaching on any particular part of it?
So in terms of my teaching, not really. I would say the only thing I kind of specialize in is more general conversation. I don't focus on, for example, like pronunciation, or anything like that. I always kind of think about my classes as a bit of a sandbox for students to come, and it's a safe place to come to and just practice and have fun and just try to experiment with what you know. And so I usually follow my students' preference in that regard. If they have questions about grammar, then let's talk about grammar. If you want to talk about pronunciation, let's talk about it. So I don't really focus in any way. Although I can say in my content creation, I originally wanted to be a content creator because I wanted to create materials for lower intermediate and beginning students or learners, but I wasn't really able to do that in the way that I wanted to in the beginning. So I was creating for, and I'm still creating for, upper intermediate and advanced levels, but now I'm able to do more what I want, which is create materials, specifically videos for lower intermediate beginners, and I also want to do materials for super beginners as well. So if I have a focus, I would say I want that to be my main focus.
Nice. And you already mentioned the different levels. Also, speaking of that, and moving a bit towards the topic of learning, how would you split the journey of somebody who learns a language? To what levels would you split it, and what challenges and maybe the most important things are at every level?
So this is a very interesting question. So I always struggle with this concept of levels because calling it levels makes it seem like a very linear process. And so I understand why we use this, because as humans, we love to categorize things. We can't help ourselves. However, I always think about language like art. It's an artistic expression. It's not math. There's no one right answer. So if I had to give one answer, I would say most people learn a language in order to communicate, right? So the levels we can think about can be how more or less confident you are in communicating. So like in the beginning, you're less confident. You don't know as much, you're still pulling words from your environment, still figuring out how to label things. But exactly. Yeah. And then, as you move along, things become more familiar. But the thing is, those levels of confidence can change, right? Because it depends on the topic. It's not an all or nothing proposition. So you can be more confident on this topic and less confident on the other. So it may not be a very satisfying answer, but I think that's kind of how I think about it in terms of levels.
Okay. Yes, that makes sense. If I would ask you, at what point of time for students learning vocabulary becomes bigger priority, what would that be?
So, of course, vocabulary is always important at every stage, because knowing what to call things is what helps you communicate. But I think when you're first learning a language, I think that's where vocabulary is critical, like in the beginning stage. But I want to add, a more specific note there. I think when you're first starting out learning a language, it's more important to focus on the most common concrete nouns and verbs. And because it's kind of like that 80-20 rule, like it's a little bit of the language, but it's going to give you exposure and understanding of a much wider part of the language. So starting out with those most common concrete nouns and verbs, then like branching out to adjectives and prepositions and all of that fun stuff. But as a teacher, one thing I have to say about vocabulary, at any level, if there's a word you don't know, always use the simplest words you already know to get your point across, because the main goal should be communication. And too many of my students hyperfixate on finding the exact right word, and that does not facilitate communication.
Yeah, I can totally relate. So not to overcomplicate, right?
Right.
People gonna
Exactly.
understand.
Yep.
Yeah.
Simple is not bad.
Moving a little bit towards technology, do you recommend to your students in any kinds of situations to use some kind of software for learning?
So this is so interesting, because I learned the hard way that I can't really recommend flashcard apps, because so many of my students kind of shy away from flashcards in general because it seems too much like homework, like school. And even though I think that flashcard apps are so useful, every single time I recommend them, they're just like, oh, you could see on their face, they're just like, you know? And I try to say, like, hey, this is what I do as a language learner myself. It's if you should maintain a constant contact with the language, but I've managed to convince a few students, but not all, not as many as I'd like. So I usually end up recommending more, not so much software, but more organic content. So like, YouTube videos and movies and TV series and some other more language learning focused things for pronunciation or vocabulary building, but unfortunately not so much software.
Yeah, and what you told about them sort of not shying away, but not being very excited about using cars, for example, I totally can relate, because doing our research on our side, on the product side, I talked to some people, and I remember one girl told me that I really don't want to use any software because it feels like learning.
It feels like learning.
Although like goal is learning, but she didn't want to feel like learning. So it must feel like a bit more on the entertaining part of the spectrum. Okay, let's move to teaching. Can you compare teaching when you just started and teaching now? Did it change at all?
So undoubtedly, the biggest technological change since I started teaching in 2019 is AI. Like, that is absolutely the biggest change. But I would have to say, though, that it hasn't had an enormous impact on my teaching. But I think that it is slowly changing the teacher's position or the teacher's role in language learning a little bit. So that is definitely the biggest difference since I started teaching.
How do you think this role changes with AI? Do you like, even if it's subtle changes, what are those?
I would say the thing about AI, I think there's this belief, this widespread belief that AI can replace teachers. And I think that belief is starting to take root. I don't believe that that's actually true. I think that AI has a good role to play, but I don't think that it is able to replace the teacher's role. But I think that even though it hasn't had a huge impact on my teaching, I can't speak for other teachers, but so far I've seen AI appear in things like, if you were to record a class, for example, AI can summarize that class for you. And like, that's useful. That's cool. I've also seen things like, some of my students actually will come to me and say, hey, can you explain this? Because I asked AI and AI couldn't tell me. So clearly students are going to AI first before teachers. But I don't think that specific trend is a bad thing. But this belief that AI can replace a teacher long term, that I think is we're going to see some changes there, I think. Over time.
Still all of us are still now waiting to see what it's going to be like in the end, because I think we didn't really had AI change on practice happened yet.
Yeah.
Comparing to like 5 years ago,
Mm.
2019, you told, were there anything positive in new technological things which appeared that you started using?
Honestly, I keep it pretty simple in my classes. My classes are largely just conversation based. And so I would say that probably in terms of like a digital tool or in terms of technology, I'm really, really grateful that I'm able to do things like bring my Kindle books into class. That's probably the biggest difference. I use tools like there's a note-taking app on my iPad that I'm able to kind of bring my Kindle book into it, and so I can annotate my Kindle book as I talk to my student or as we read this book together. And I'm able to share my iPad screen on my computer, and that's probably the biggest digital tool difference since I first started. But that's just because I'm a very simple person and I like to keep things simple. So I'm not usually, grabbing as many digital tools as possible. Like to keep it simple.
Wow, that didn't sound simple,
Oh,
actually. That sound pretty sophisticated. If I would ask you, do you remember any moment when you first saw something, some digital product, and you had an impression that, oh, this is going to change either my process, and it's not going to be like it was before going forward, or maybe it's going to significantly change things for learners?
I know I've kind of been talking about AI a lot, but like because that is so, it is so revolutionary, and now it's become so pervasive where we see it just everywhere, popping up everywhere. And I really got an inkling about what's possible with AI in terms of language learning. I read this book called Brave New Words, and it's by Salman Khan, who's the creator of Khan Academy. And I read this book, and in it, he talks about how the way his company uses AI to help teach kids various topics. And I immediately saw how it could be applied to language learning. And so it actually inspired me to try using ChatGPT for my language learning, which I should be clear, I was pretty late to the game on that one, because as soon as ChatGPT came out and, just went viral, like the language learning community on YouTube specifically went feral trying it out for that purpose. So even though I don't really use AI in my teaching, I do use it in my language learning. And that, like, I see a lot of possibility for progress in that way. I think it's only going to get more and more sophisticated, and we're only going to be able to do more and more and more over time. So it's very interesting. And obviously, we will all be keeping an eye on that one, I think.
So I sense that you're saying that we kind of haven't seen it yet, right? But the potential is enormous.
Potential is enormous, yeah, because I think the thing that I think, again, that this deep rooted or not deep rooted, but this idea taking root that AI is going to be able to replace a tutor. I mean, apps and AI, I think, are only able to offer a cheap imitation. Can they be useful? 100%, especially if you're just learning, you're just starting out learning a language, and maybe you don't even know enough to communicate yet with a tutor. Then using like the voice feature on, on an AI app can kind of take the pressure off learning how to start speaking and how to start listening. So it can be very, very useful. And so I think in some ways, AI and other apps like that have already kind of started to push teachers out just a smidge. But I also would want to remind students who maybe they want to try, an app first, don't stick with it long term. It's only a tool, because if you're learning a language to communicate with native speakers, presumably, then paying for a tutor or a teacher is the best thing you can do, because it gives you a native speaker who is specifically willing to help you improve. So if you're learning a language to communicate, communicate with native speakers. Like that's the way to go. But I don't think that we have seen everything that AI can do, especially in terms of pronunciation, because I don't think we're there yet at all with AI being able to accurately give feedback on your pronunciation. I think there's a bit of a joke in the language learning community about the ability for something to evaluate your pronunciation. Like you're saying maybe a completely different word on purpose and it still says, oh, 100%, well done. And like, I'm not convinced we're there yet when it comes to any digital tool being able to accurately assess someone's pronunciation. But, maybe one day I think we'll get there, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, I totally understand what you mean. And I weirdly feel that I should try to explain myself as a representative of tech community, maybe, but I'm not on that side. I'm not with that group completely. But tech community is guilty for the principle of fake it till you make it. And I saw promotions of applications which teach you pronunciation and a lot of other things. But yeah, I don't think that we are there by far. Let me ask you, getting back to this day, is there anything in software or different products which you think tutors can adopt in their processes so that it helps actually their students to learn languages outside of classes?
So since I can't really convince many of my students to do flashcards, I try to recommend, like I said, organic content. And probably one of the digital tools that I really like that still lets you take in organic content, but is structured for the language learner is probably, apps that, can I mention a specific app or should I avoid names?
Yeah, okay. That's fine.
So like an app, for example, like LingoPie that lets you watch like videos, like Netflix videos, TV series, movies, all these things. And it's specifically built for language learners where, you've got subtitles available in multiple languages. You can hover over a word and you can see a translation. You can add it to a flashcard deck and all these things. That is probably one of my biggest recommendations for students outside of class. I have to mention, being a teacher, sometimes it could be so frustrating that you can recommend things to students. And it's like that expression, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Like, I think that flashcard apps, for example, are a fantastic tool, and also things like LingoPie, but students have to actually choose to do that with their free time outside of class. So that's the biggest challenge.
Yeah, recently I saw somebody asking a question: who is responsible for learning a language? Is it a tutor or student? And the answer is both. So yeah,
that's interesting. I would argue the student. I would. I know that's not our topic, but like, because I have to say, in terms of like different student styles and things like that, the students who succeed, well, I don't want to use that word too lightly, but like students who progress are always the ones with that growth mindset, who accept that mistakes are part of the process and who are curious about English outside of class. But on the other hand, I have students as well who only, they only study English in class with me and not outside of it. So I would say, teachers are just another tool. It's not a magic pill. It's not magic in any way, shape, or form. We are just another tool to be utilized, right? So I don't know. I would argue it's a student.
So your answer is students. Okay.
Yeah.
So overall, speaking of technology, are you more excited or intimidated about the changes which are coming?
I would say both, because the way that technology evolves is an unknown factor. It's an unknown in general. And the unknown is always a little bit scary and a little bit exciting. So definitely both.
And we are almost at time. And I have just one question left. And it's probably going to be a regular. Do you think that AI eventually going to replace tutors? You partially already answered, but...
I think it will try. I think it'll try, but I think, the more common something becomes, even something new and exciting like AI, as it becomes more common, something like a real person is going to become more valuable. So I think in time, yeah, maybe more people shift towards AI and maybe teachers kind of seem like they're getting replaced, in a big way. But I think that teachers will never fully be able to be replaced. I don't think that AI can actually ever be a full substitute for a real, native speaker warm body.
So you
So
kind of dare it, like bring it on, try.
yeah. It's like, yeah, I can, whatever you could do, I could do better, So
I actually
yeah,
like it that you told that it gonna make human more valuable.
I think so. I hope so.
I like this.
Do I know? No, but I hope.
Okay. Thanks, Jean. It was a real pleasure talking to you.
Likewise.
If you have any plans or tell whoever is going to listen or watch to this, how they can find you, how they can find content which you create.
Yeah. So I have a website, missjeanteaches.com, and I'm also Miss Jean Teaches on TikTok, Instagram, and I'm also on Blue Sky as well. And of course on YouTube, Miss Jean Teaches. So I'm Miss Jean Teaches everywhere.
Nice. Check it. It's amazing content. Believe me.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone. That was Tutor and Tech and Jean Teaches.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks.
Tutor and Tech. Project about teaching languages, learning, technology, and how they co-evolve together.